Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. Out at sea, a colossal three-masted warship gently rocked with the ocean waves. From a distance, the ship's paint and build made it resemble a giant white whale. Majestic and awe-inspiring, it sat atop the sea like a god of the ocean. Massive, powerful, unshakable. Its sheer presence seemed to suppress the ocean itself as if the waves dared not act up in its shadow. Flanking it were four slightly smaller but equally formidable ships of similar design. Together, the 5 vessels formed a fleet whose aura alone could shake the world. This was none other than the main fleet of the Whitebeard Pirates, known across all 4 seas. And at the heart of this fleet the massive whale-like ship was Whitebeard's flagship, the Moby Dick. On the Moby Dick's main deck, Whitebeard sat proudly in his signature seat, draped in his iconic white cape with red lining. A few curvaceous nurses in pink dresses busily tended to him, swapping out 4 bags without missing a beat. Though his health had clearly declined, his eyes remained sharp, commanding respect. He swept his gaze across the deck where 15 division commanders stood, stunned into silence. Then, in a deep, booming voice, he said, "You heard me right. As of now, I'm promoting Roya to be my vice-captain." The silence shattered. The 15 commanders managed to hold their composure, quickly exchanging confused glances. But the other crew members around them weren't so composed. One of them leaned toward a comrade and whispered, "Hey, you ever heard of this guy Roya?" The question was met with a blank shake of the head. No clue. But among the large crowd, someone eventually spoke up. And bit by bit, a discussion broke out. "I think he's a lookout on this ship." "Nah, more like a trainee lookout. We played cards last night, pretty sure that's what he said." "Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, he only joined last month when we stopped for water at some no-name island. So he's a rookie of rookies. Less than a month on board, and he's vice-captain now? Who is this guy?" Piece by piece, they pieced together Roya's backstory. Their disbelief grew, and soon the murmurs reached the ears of the division commanders. Marco the Phoenix, though never officially declared vice-captain, had always been recognized by the crew as Whitebeard's number 2. And now, Whitebeard had summoned everyone, captains, corps members, everyone, just to name a nobody as his right hand? Even calm, stoic Marco couldn't stop the spark of discontent flaring up inside him. By power? Marco was the wielder of a mythical Zoan devil fruit, with god-tier regeneration, and mastery over both armament and observation haki. No one in the crew could match him except Whitebeard. By seniority? Marco had been with Whitebeard for over 30 years, one of the ship's oldest members. By merit? Every major battle and victory under the Whitebeard flag had his name written on it. And now, some rookie, a literal intern, gets promoted to vice-captain? Still, out of respect for Pops, Marco swallowed his outrage and held his tongue. But Flower Sword Vista, a longtime friend of Marco's and commander of the 5th Division, wasn't as restrained. With a sharp shing, he drew his 2 long swords and slashed them in an X in front of him, the blades cutting the very air. The cross-shaped tear lingered. That's how much anger he poured into the strike. He roared. "Where is this Roya? Come out. Let me see for myself what makes you fit to be vice-captain." Whitebeard, as usual, treated his crew like his own sons. Even at such an open challenge, he simply chuckled and looked skyward. Marco noticed it instantly. Whitebeard never wasted energy now. If he looked somewhere, it meant something. Marco followed his line of sight, and there, lying across the horizontal beam of the main mast, was a lone figure. He lay with his hands folded behind his head, one leg crossed over the other, gently swaying with the ship. "That's him? That's Roya. Is he sleeping?" "He's actually sleeping." Marco activated his observation haki. No mistake, that was the guy. Sleeping soundly. Rage surged in Marco like a phoenix's flame. The moment Pops announces his new vice-captain, this guy's asleep? No respect at all. And not only that, wasn't he supposed to be on lookout duty? He's slacking during his shift too. Unbelievable. Marco clenched his fists. No way I'm letting Pops go through with this. I'm stopping this madness right now. But before Marco could speak, Vista was already in the air, leaping toward the mast. As one of Whitebeard's most trusted veterans, with 30 years of battle experience, Vista's power was nothing to underestimate. He too had spotted the sleeping figure. "I, Vista, commander of the 5th Division, challenge Vice-Captain Roya." His voice boomed across the deck. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he unleashed one of his most beautiful and famous sword techniques. Rose Waltz. His twin swords danced, painting the air with brilliant crimson petals. These rose-like sword slashes floated gently toward Roya, but their grace was deceptive. They were fast, deadly fast. In the blink of an eye, they were already upon him. Vista smirked. He didn't want to kill the rookie that would break Whitebeard's rules. But he'd show him his place. His timing? Flawless. Vista's intent was crystal clear, to draw the attention of the entire crew and, under their collective gaze, slice this bastard's clothes to ribbons without even scratching his skin. No damage but maximum humiliation. Let's see, Vice Captain, let my ultimate sword technique turn you into the eternal laughingstock of the Whitebeard Pirates. The floating rose petals looked dazzling, but each was actually armament Haki-infused sword energy. Under Vista's precise control, they could cut anything he chose. In an instant, they poured down toward Roya, who appeared completely unaware. That's it for him, muttered one pirate with a hint of pity. Several crewmates who were somewhat familiar with Roya instinctively turned away, unable to watch what they assumed would be his violent, cloth-shredding defeat. Roya may not seem reliable, but for Vista to humiliate him like this, I don't think he'll take it lightly. He's Pop's hand-picked vice-captain, after all. But Marco and a few other division commanders saw through Vista's true intentions. Their eyes narrowed with concern about what this might mean for the relationship between the two. As the rose petals descended, Vista sheathed his swords with a flourish. He gracefully landed back on deck, arms folded, smiling smugly as he waited for the exact moment when Roya, under the gaze of over 1,600 pirates, would awaken in shredded clothes and complete disgrace. Just as his feet came level with the mast's horizontal beam, the same one where Roya lay, the rose petals finally touched down on their target. But then Vista blinked. Roya's body moved just the slightest twitch and suddenly, the entire barrage of rose petals vanished. Vista's eyes flew wide open. His body continued to fall, no time to process what had just happened. With a soft thud, he landed smoothly on the deck. But his heart was pounding violently. What the hell was that? Haki? Or a devil fruit? Why did my rose petals vanish like they were eaten up by something? Marco's eyes narrowed. He turned to Yozu, who also looked completely stunned. Vista's ultimate move didn't work. It wasn't dodged. It wasn't blocked. It had no effect whatsoever. The commanders exchanged looks, all filled with disbelief. Vista had clearly intended to humiliate Roya in front of the entire crew, but Roya had nullified the attack entirely, using a method they couldn't even begin to explain. Something that should have been impossible, they had just witnessed with their own eyes. Meanwhile, the regular crewmates without the sharp perception or haki of the commanders were utterly confused. I mean, come on, with Vista's strength, that rookie lookout should have been easy to take down. But from the look on Vista's face, was he the one who got wrecked? Yo, bro, what just happened? No idea, I just saw Vista attack. Don't be dumb. That wasn't a sneak attack, he literally shouted twice before swinging. Roya had plenty of time to react. Forget about sneak attacks, did he dodge? It looked like he dodged. Or didn't. Whatever happened, he didn't get hit. Vista's face twitched. His eyes were bloodshot. Despite everything, he couldn't remember exactly what he had seen. Was that really a perfect defense? Overwhelmed by confusion and disbelief, Vista launched himself into the air once more, landing back on the beam where Roya lay. There he was completely unharmed. He had only shifted his body slightly. Just a tiny movement. But to a master swordsman like Vista, that tiny movement told a big story. The entire moment now reconstructed itself in Vista's mind. The rose petals had descended in a dense barrage. Roya had tried to dodge instinctively but realized he wouldn't be able to fully escape. So he gave up on dodging and let them fall onto him. And then, they melted. Like snowflakes in sunlight. Just gone. So, he really was asleep. He didn't even wake up. That wasn't an act. Vista's heart raced wildly. He activated his observation haki, trying to sense Roya's state. No matter how deeply he probed, Roya was, without a doubt, in deep sleep. Asleep, and he still somehow nullified my attack. Vista's temples throbbed. He felt like his blood pressure was about to explode. His ears buzzed with static. No. It wasn't just a dodge. My sword energy, my haki, was erased. If he had just avoided it, the mast beneath him would have been destroyed too, but it's completely intact. What kind of ability is this? Even a Logia-type devil fruit wouldn't do this. Now thoroughly shaken, Vista's mind spiraled as he tried to make sense of it. Dash. Down below, the rest of the crew had erupted into full-blown chatter. Bro, I think Roya might actually be a beast. Even Captain Vista couldn't touch him. Duh. Pops made him vice-captain personally. Of course he's strong. But wait, he's still asleep, right? What if Vista was just testing him then pulled back when he realized he really was sleeping? That last comment actually made some sense. Even Marco furrowed his brow slightly. He glanced up at Vista and saw the man's dazed, twitching expression. Something didn't add up. What truly disturbed Marco was that Vista's armament Haki-enhanced sword energy had vanished without leaving a single mark. No scratches. No impact. No sign it ever existed. That was, beyond strange. He turned his eyes toward Whitebeard. If anyone knew the truth it would be Pops himself. But all Marco saw was a deep, mysterious smile on Whitebeard's face. Clearly, Whitebeard had anticipated this exact outcome all along. Marco couldn't help but think. So Pops already knew just how powerful Roya is. That's why he chose this moment, a moment that would send a message to us all. Does that mean Pops doesn't even trust our chances in the war that's coming? The thought stung. Marco's chest tightened, the bitter taste of realization filling his throat. Vice Captain. Pops can give that title to anyone he wants. Whether I have it or not doesn't change who I am, or what I fight for. He looked down and sighed. And that's enough, isn't it? The rest of the commanders shared the same thoughts as Marco, a mix of shock and anxious hope. Because honestly, even at their full power, not a single one of them could have nullified Vista's Rose Waltz the way Roya just did. Roya. In that moment, his name carved itself into their minds like an eternal brand. Regardless of how bizarre it all seemed, at this crucial juncture preparing to storm Marineford and rescue Ace, the sudden emergence of such a powerhouse could only be a blessing for the Whitebeard Pirates. So what if he was made vice captain, one of the most respected positions in the crew? Saving a brother Ace was all that truly mattered. While the captains could accept that with maturity and vision, the same couldn't be said for the rank-and-file pirates. Vista's shaken demeanor and the captain's stunned silence only fueled suspicions that Vista had lost. And just like that, the lower deck exploded into fiery debate. Judging by the captain's expressions, did Vista really lose? Didn't you just say Vista was testing him a minute ago? Nonsense. There's no way a commander would lose. How could he lose to a trainee lookout? Trainee lookout? That's Vice Captain Roya now. Losing to the Vice Captain isn't strange at all. Even Whitebeard himself stayed silent, so the arguments below grew louder and more reckless. Dash. Suddenly, a voice rang out, lazy, annoyed, and crystal clear. So damn noisy. I thought this was supposed to be a meeting. Can't a guy even sleep around here? Royal waved a hand around his ear as if swatting flies, then finally sat up with a sigh. Huh? Brother Vista, why are you standing there? Trying to mount me like a flying dragon or something? Better watch out, I might punch you. He chuckled and raised a playful fist. But Vista, already in a fragile mental state, flinched hard and leapt back in panic, then Xing drew his swords once again. I know I'm no match for you, but I'll fight with everything I've got. Come at me, newly appointed vice captain. His posture was dead serious, as if preparing for his final stand, and Roya blinked, still groggy. Newly appointed what now? He asked, pointing at himself. You mean me? Finally snapping out of his sleepy fog, Roya hopped off the mast and landed softly before Whitebeard. Oi, you old geezer, you really pulled a fast one on me, huh? Slapped a title on me while I was sleeping? What's your deal? Whitebeard let out a hearty laugh, stroking his crescent-shaped mustache, but said nothing. That laugh, that motion, Marco, Vista, and the other veterans recognized it immediately. It was Whitebeard's guilty laugh. Which meant, he really had appointed Roya as vice-captain while the guy was asleep. And seeing Roya stand there, fists on hips, acting like he was about to scold a parent, Whitebeard didn't just tolerate it. He looked like he was trying not to feel guilty. The captains and corps officers were completely dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Royal was genuinely pissed. He didn't mind being a pirate after all, he had joined Whitebeard's flagship, but being shoved into a position like this without warning? That rubbed him the wrong way. Just as he was about to go off, a voice echoed inside his head. Congratulations, host. You are now an official member of the Whitebeard Pirates. Bounty achievement system unlocked. Royal paused and opened the interface in his mind. TCH thought it was something good. Just a stat reward system based on bounty levels. Every 100 million in bounty earns 100 attribute points. Not bad, I guess. If I reach a Yonko level bounty, I'd rack up around 5,000 points, enough to max out the other Haki types and fighting skills. As he focused, system data filled his thoughts. Dash. Name, Roya. Occupation, Pirate. Affiliation, Whitebeard Pirates. Rank, Vice Captain. Conqueror's Haki, 0, locked. Armament Haki, 0, locked. Observation Haki, 1500, Extreme Mutation. Vitality, 999, Maxed. Combat Skill, 66, Barroom Brawler. Weapon Mastery, 0, Untrained. Special Techniques, none. Bounty, 0, Unknown Nobody. Dash. This was his default template, no customization allowed. Aside from an absurdly high starting vitality stat, the rest were flat zeros. Fortunately, the system had gifted him 1000 attribute points. Naturally, Roya dumped all of it into Observation Haki. That alone had pushed it to a fully awakened state, far beyond normal. It advanced past simple sensory enhancement to an externalized form, an omnidirectional, passive auto-dodge system that worked even if he was drunk, or asleep. Satisfied with the ridiculous defense boost, he thought that was it until the system awarded him 500 more points after boarding the Moby Dick. Which made him wonder. What happens if I pump those 500 into an already maxed Observation Haki? He tried it. Result? Observation Haki, 1500, Extreme Mutation. Now it wasn't even Haki anymore, it had become a field around him, a kind of defensive aura that could only be described as miraculous. Roya called it, the Observation Field. No wonder Whitebeard noticed something off. Even with the field restrained, he saw through me and stuck me with the vice captain title. Guess this is his way of pushing me to help rescue Ace. Roya glanced at Whitebeard again, who now looked faintly pleading. And with that, he softened. Just an old man trying to save his beloved son. What's so wrong with that? He sighed deeply. All right, fine. I'll accept the vice captain position for now. Whitebeard beamed, his mustache curling proudly. But Roya wasn't finished. But let me be clear, I'm not going to fight anyone for you. If you want to deal with the Marines, that's on you. The commanders were stunned. Whitebeard had swallowed his pride for this guy, and all he got was arrogance. Even Marco had been frowning the whole time until he saw Whitebeard's face. The old man looked relieved. That's when Marco finally understood. So Pops knew about Roya's strength all along. And he made this decision now because he sees what's coming. Is that it, Pops? You've lost confidence in the war ahead. The realization hit Marco hard. But then, a thought brought him peace. Vice captain or not, it doesn't change what I have to do. He smiled faintly, ready to speak with Roya when suddenly something changed. Suddenly, Izzo, captain of the 16th Division, drew both pistols from his waist. And fired directly at Roya. And not just any shot, he opened with his signature technique, bullet/rounds. Each steel pellet was wrapped precisely in armament Haki, forming a compact ring of power. Upon impact, these rounds not only caused normal ballistic damage, but also released a Haki-infused cutting force, dramatically increasing their lethality. The irregular spin of the bullets upon hitting the target would cause that slash effect to amplify endlessly. Far more brutal than ordinary hollow point rounds. Dash. This sudden attack left the other commanders stunned, but it was already too late to stop it. Boosted by Haki, the bullets were simply too fast. No one had enough time to react, not even elite veterans. Marco, being closest to Roya, threw a punch in desperation, trying to interfere with the bullet's path. But he was a second too slow. The bullet/rounds whizzed past his fist completely undisturbed. Dash. And yet, Roya didn't flinch. In fact, he smiled. This kind of attack? Not even close. To Roya, bullets like these could never even touch him. At the very moment Izzo reached for his guns, Roya had already seen the attack thanks to his Observation Haki field. What's more, he sensed clearly that there was no killing intent behind the bullets. So he simply stood there, relaxed, as the bullets came flying. Only to vanish into thin air, less than a centimeter from his skin. Since they're so eager to see, might as well give them a show. Dash. Marco and the others suddenly remembered something. That's exactly what happened with Vista's Rose Waltz earlier. They'd already seen it once. But now, from ground level, the spectacle was even more mind-blowing. Marco forgot to even pull his fist back, frozen in a twisted pose, eyes locked on the spot where the bullets had disappeared. Dash. The crew fell completely silent, jaws dropping. Vista's Rose Waltz? No effect. Izzo's bullet/rounds? Gone without a trace. The pirates looked at one another in sheer confusion. No one could explain what just happened. Except for Izzo, who wasn't surprised at all. He calmly blew the smoke from his pistol, spun it, and holstered it with a flourish. Then he spoke. As you all saw, our new vice-captain is more than worthy of the title. Both Captain Vista's Rose Waltz and my bullet/rounds didn't even reach him. They were dissolved by an invisible force field. Have you ever seen such an ability before? Izzo's elegant performance and explanation had the perfect effect. The mystery around Roya only deepened, making him seem both powerful and unknowable. The pirates who had doubted him now looked at him with nothing but admiration. To pirates, strength is everything. And Roya's power was undeniable. Roya felt their growing respect in their gazes. Even he couldn't help but feel a hint of pride. Not bad, Izzo. Master of dance, drag, and apparently PR. With just one move, Izzo had diffused nearly all the doubt from the crew and elevated Roya's mystique and authority. A flawless public relations strategy, Roya thought. I name you, the PR king. Marco, realizing Izzo's true intention, looked at Roya again. Seeing that Roya wasn't bothered by Izzo's dramatic stunt, Marco relaxed at last. He stepped forward, extending a hand sincerely. Welcome to the Whitebeard Pirates, Vice Captain. Roya smiled and shook the offered hand. Vista approached next, eyes wide with curiosity. Vice Captain, may I ask, what kind of haki or devil fruit power did you use to counter our techniques so completely? Roya had no reason to hide it. After all, this ability was granted by his system. Anyone trying to copy it would probably need to pay a price they couldn't imagine. So he answered honestly. What I used, is something I call the Observation Haki field. Observation Haki field? Vista echoed, confused. This question was shared by the other commanders. Even Whitebeard himself. Completely nullifying incoming attacks? Everyone wanted to understand how it worked. But this observation field was a term no one had ever heard before. Everyone understood what Observation Haki was. But this was on another level. Seeing the eager looks on their faces, Roya explained. Once you've pushed Observation Haki to its absolute limit, you can take it one step further. You reach the realm of the field. Marco, still trying to process, said. As far as I know, Haki development has 3 tiers, basic, intermediate, and advanced. Even reaching the top tier is rare. But going beyond that? Into some kind of domain? That's insane. Roya smiled, then unleashed what he had been suppressing this whole time. His Observation Haki field exploded outward, enveloping the entire fleet. No explanation could match what they now felt directly. Marco's expression shifted, eyes wide with disbelief. This feeling, being completely exposed. Is this what the observation field does? Vista gripped his sword tighter, sweat beading on his brow. It's like, someone's inside my head. Reading my sword style. Every feint I try is instantly countered. It's terrifying. I can't resist it at all. Even Whitebeard himself exuded a visible aura of pressure, unleashing his Conqueror's Haki to try and suppress Roya's field. But it didn't work. His Haki flared then flickered. Inside Roya's domain, even Whitebeard's Conqueror's Haki couldn't fully manifest. Even Pops can't break through. The commanders could hardly believe it. This was their strongest man. The great Whitebeard, conqueror of the seas for decades. Now overwhelmed by Roya's observation field. Whitebeard and the division commanders stood in stunned silence, straining against the crushing pressure of Roya's observation Haki domain. The core members on the outskirts, those with slightly less strength, began to show signs of losing control under its influence. Hey, is anyone else suddenly really agitated? Like you just have to start swinging your blade. You feel it too? My greatsword is itching like it hasn't been used in years. Weird. You guys wanna fight, but all I wanna do is go back to my cabin and count my savings. Ah, Miss Moore from Secret Blue Island. I wonder if she still remembers me. One by one, the crew began slipping into their deepest desires, fighting, greed, lust, sentimentality. Each person sank helplessly into a trance driven by their own subconscious cravings. Further out, the regular crew members had already devolved into chaos. Some were brawling over a bottle of booze, some were stealing from their crewmates, and some were confessing their undying love to the absolute horror of those on the receiving end. Rationality was out the window. Just as the entire fleet teetered on the edge of madness, Roya casually withdrew the observation field. In an instant, everyone snapped back to normal. Movements froze. Minds cleared. Chaos halted. What the hell just happened? I swear I heard someone whispering in my ear, then blanked out. Okay fine, we were just messing around, but why are you holding my belt? You've got your hand on my belt too, don't act innocent. Marco wiped the sweat from his forehead, gasping for air. So this is, the true power of a domain. It reads your mind, breaks through your weaknesses, stirs your emotions. And worst of all, it can suppress other Haki. Roya chuckled. That's just the basic passive effect of the observation field. Nothing worth panicking over. Vista gawked. That was basic. Then what's the non-basic passive effect supposed to be? And don't even get me started on the active effects. Roya raised an eyebrow. Better if I don't tell you. Don't want to give you nightmares. You'll understand once you reach this level yourself. Dash. He turned to Whitebeard. Old man, since you've gone and handed me your entire life's work to manage, I guess I'll reluctantly lend these guys some guidance. And maybe take care of that thing with your health while I'm at it. Because let's be honest, facing the fleet admiral and the 3 admirals in your condition? You're not gonna make it. Dash. Whitebeard's face lit up with a wide, relieved grin. Slapping his knee, he bellowed. Send word to all 4 seas. Let the whole world know Roya is the vice-captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. All of you bear witness to the moment the world government places a 10 billion bounty on his head. Roya smirked proudly, nodding. Believe me. That day's not far off. Their voices echoed across the Moby Dick and its escort ships, filling every pirate with excitement and pride. Dash. By now, Whitebeard and the commanders had fully grasped Roya's terrifying strength. And the rest of the crew, thanks to the lingering effects of the observation field, had subconsciously accepted that Roya was untouchable. From an intern lookout to second-in-command of one of the most legendary crews in the world, Roya's rise had been meteoric and undeniable. With Whitebeard's health and management style in decline, it was already clear. Roya was now the de facto leader of the Whitebeard Pirates. Dash. Meanwhile, in the World Economy News office, President Morgans tapped a finger on Roya's photo, examining it closely. Handsome face. Young. And he debuts as vice-captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. Are all young people this monstrous nowadays? Let's see how much the world government dares to offer as his bounty. Dash. Hot off the press, newspapers featuring Roya's explosive debut were strapped to the legs of news seagulls and scattered across the world. Dash. Marine Headquarters, Marineford, War Room. Fleet Admiral Sengoku tossed Roya's photo on the table, his face dark. Vice-Captain Roya? All we have is a name and a rank, no background, no power profile, no battle record. And you have the audacity to submit this kind of incomplete report to me. Across from him, Chief Strategist Tsuru nonchalantly adjusted the gold bangles on her right hand. She didn't seem fazed at all by Sengoku's fury. As Admirals Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji placed their own files on the table, Tsuru finally spoke. According to CP Intel, Roya has already clashed with Vista and Izzo. Both lost. Completely. Without resistance. Dash. Akainu cracked his neck. Then this Roya, really is Whitebeard's number 2. Only beneath the old man himself. Tsuru nodded. That's how it looks from the intel. But don't rule out the possibility that Whitebeard is bluffing. He could be using Roya to distract us, preparing for a more direct assault. Kizaru let out a weird chuckle, sliding his shades up. Oh, that's scary. Even Whitebeard's starting to play mind games now. Tsuru's face wrinkled further, clearly fantasizing about strangling him with her crow's feet. Dash. Suddenly, Sengoku unleashed his Conqueror's Haki, silencing the room. No matter how strong Roya is, the execution of Ace will not be delayed. Issue the order, summon all elite forces and the 7 warlords of the sea to Marineford. Edward Newgate. You want a final war? Then this fleet admiral will give you a final war. This time, I will wipe your pirate crew off the face of the earth. He slammed his palm down on the report with thunderous force. Dash. The 3 admirals and Tsuru prepared to leave. But Sengoku added one last remark, his lips curling into a cold smirk. Oh, and Roya's bounty? Set it at one single belly. If Whitebeard wants to raise him as a symbol of morale, then let that be the joke. Dash. Tsuru smiled faintly. Humiliating Roya is the same as humiliating Whitebeard. One belly, a perfectly cruel price. Dash. Within hours, the bounty poster hit the streets. One belly for the vice-captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. Are they serious? One belly. That won't even buy a newspaper. Man, I hate the Marines, but this is brilliant. I've never been so fired up in my life. Wait, bro, why'd you stab me? Sorry man, my sword moved too fast. Didn't realize you were an ally. Roya casually tossed the newspaper in his hand into the sea. He watched as the print, bearing his one belly bounty, sank beneath the waves, instantly swallowed by the ocean. Marco stepped up beside him, speaking gently. Vice-Captain, don't let that nonsense get to you. It's just a cheap marine trick meant to rattle our morale. But Roya smiled. Cheap as it is, it's actually pretty effective. Marineford, huh? Hat. Marco gave his shoulder a friendly pat, changing the subject. Forget it for now. The sun's setting, why not come to my cabin for a few rounds of cards? Starting tomorrow, allied pirate crews will start pouring in. This might be our last quiet night for a while. Roya couldn't help but admire Marco's bravery. You actually want to play cards, with someone who has an observation haki domain? Marco, you madman! Dash. That night, Roya dominated the card table. With his domain active, every card was an open book. He saw every hand, every bluff, every tell. Victory was never in question. Dash. By morning, Roya stepped out of Marco's cabin, refreshed by the cool ocean breeze. A little tired from the smoky, noisy card session but mentally sharp as ever. Suddenly, he paused, eyes narrowing toward the southern horizon. Finally! An allied crew has arrived. Though the ship was still a distant speck on the waterline, only a bit of its mast peeking over the observation domain had already relayed full identity data to Roya's mind. Squard, the great whirlpool spider. If you knew Ace was Roger's biological son, would you still be sailing this way so eagerly? Roya chuckled softly, then returned to his luxury vice-captain's quarters. Squard's ship would need at least half a day to reach the Moby Dick, which gave Roya just enough time for some beauty sleep. Dash. By midday, Squard's flagship finally arrived. A small boat was lowered from it and rowed over to the Moby Dick by a few sailors. Squard leapt from the boat into the boarding net, rising onto the deck. Waiting to greet him was a sleep-deprived Marco. He'd been losing all night, only barely winning back his losses in the last few hands. The rush kept him up until morning. But now, seeing the first ally to answer Whitebeard's call, he forced himself upright and strode over with a grin. Squard, you made it. That couldn't have been easy. But Squard didn't look pleased. He frowned, voice sharp. Marco, what's the deal with this Roya guy? The vice-captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, and his bounty is one belly. This is all over the New World now. How are we supposed to show our faces? Marco's smile faded. It's obviously a ploy by the Marines to undermine morale. You really believe that nonsense? Squard's anger only grew. All I know is that this Roya was just a trainee lookout a month ago. You telling me the Whitebeard Pirates have no one better? That we're making rookies vice-captain now? Marco took a deep breath, struggling to keep his cool. This was Pop's decision. Are you saying you don't trust his judgment? Squard snorted. All I see is favoritism. First Ace, now this Roya kid. You're telling me you haven't noticed Whitebeard always favors the new blood? Well, this time, I'm going to challenge Roya face to face. I'll show Pops exactly how useless these rookies really are. Hearing that, Marco let out a dismissive chuckle. You'll learn soon enough. Bounty doesn't equal strength. He glanced past Squard at the horizon, where more allied ships were beginning to appear. These independent pirate crews may be loyal to Pops, but they're way more unpredictable than our core divisions. Maybe it's time Squard here plays the sacrificial monkey, so the rest of the zoo knows not to pick a fight with the lion. With that thought, Marco smiled and said, "All right. If you're so eager to meet our vice-captain's power, I'll go ask if he's in the mood to teach you a lesson." He left the fuming Squard behind and walked to Roya's cabin. Just as he raised his hand to knock, the door opened from inside. Roya stepped out, yawning. "I've already sensed everything. Let me deal with this once and for all." Dash. With calm, assured steps, Roya walked up to the deck and sat in Whitebeard's throne, the seat reserved for the captain. With Whitebeard currently resting in his quarters, that seat now belonged to Roya. The other commanders, already assembled, took no issue. To them, this was simply the new norm. But Squard, who had just arrived and knew nothing of the observation field, lost it. If not for Pop's favor, you wouldn't even be on this ship. And now you have the gall to sit in his chair. You're dead. He roared and lunged forward, leaping more than 10 meters in a single bound. With a swing of his massive blade still sheathed, he brought it down like a hammer straight at Roya's head. The blade was so large and heavy, it didn't matter whether it was drawn or not. Even as a blunt weapon, it could crush a man's skull like a melon. In a rage, Squard had used his full physical strength in that strike. His crewmates watched with wild excitement, cheering him on. Meanwhile, the 15 division commanders casually picked good spots to watch the show unfold. Dash. The blade screamed through the air, closing in less than 10 centimeters from Roya's skull. Still sleepy, Roya yawned again and looked completely unimpressed. "You bastard! You're dead!" Squard, seeing Roya's bored expression, lost control. He twisted the blade, turning it from a flat strike to a sharpened edge-down kill swing, ignoring Whitebeard's strict rule not to harm crewmates. The power of the attack instantly doubled. Dash. But the expected coconut cracking head smash never came. Squard felt his blade collide with something. Like an invisible barrier. It slid to the side, missing entirely, with zero resistance. What the hell was that? Observation Haki. Squard panicked but quickly shook his head. No. If it was just Haki, he would have dodged. But my blade was redirected without ever touching him. I missed, without missing. Squard's thunderous, rage-fueled slash missed completely. And the cheering from his crewmates died instantly. Wait, what just happened? Why'd Captain Spider let him off the hook? A nearby elite crew member scoffed. If your captain can land a single hit on the vice-captain, I'll personally scrub your ship's toilets every day for the rest of my life. Another pirate added mockingly. You're wasting breath on these yokels. They wouldn't understand if you explained it to their faces. Look. Squard's going in for another strike. Dash. Squard took a step back, doubt creeping in. Gripping his blade with both hands, he shook his shoulders. His massive scabbard flew off, revealing the cold gleam of his giant sword. No way this guy's that strong. If he were, why would no one have heard of him before? I must have messed up last time. This time, I'll go all out. He won't get away again. He shouted fiercely, and a thin layer of armament haki began to wrap around his enormous blade. Watching from nearby, Marco chuckled. So that's why his temper's been shorter lately. He's awakened his haki. No wonder he's feeling cocky. Squard's horizontal slash sent out a howling gust of wind, the sheer force whistling through the air. You can dodge a vertical cut. But this wide sweep? Let's see you dodge this. The blade slashed clean through the air. Yet again, perfectly missing Roya, who remained seated and motionless. A single drop of sweat rolled down Squard's forehead. With a plop, it hit the deck, breaking the awkward silence like a pin dropping in a cathedral. Dash. At that moment, two more allied pirate captains stepped onto the deck. It was the Cavalier Doma and the Ice Witch Whitebeard. Seeing Squard frozen in a strange pose before Roya, the two exchanged a puzzled glance. Whitebeard raised a brow. What's he doing? Is Squard performing tricks for the new vice-captain? Her sarcasm sliced through Squard's fraying nerves like a knife. You bastards! To hell with this! With a furious roar, Squard abandoned his giant blade, drawing a regular longsword from his waist. The giant blade was powerful but slow. This one was built for speed. In the blink of an eye, he slashed more than 20 times. Each cut came from a different angle: slashes, thrusts, chops. All aimed at Roya's vital points. The speed was so intense, the naked eye couldn't tell which one was the real killing blow. Try dodging this, coward. I'm sealing off all your angles. Let's see you make me slip up again. The sheer pressure of his assault made even the spectators instinctively lean back. Even Vista muttered in awe. As expected from someone said to rival ace in close combat. That kind of sword speed, even I'd have trouble matching it. Dash. Roya raised an eyebrow. He's still not giving up? Even after those first two strikes missed completely? How stubborn can you be? Still unmoving in his seat, he thought. If I just sit here as he slashes at me, do I even look like a proper vice-captain? Alright then. Time to unveil the active ability of the Observation Haki domain. Dash. Squard's crew, of course, had no idea what was going on in Roya's head. To them, it looked like Squard was pressuring Roya hard, and they began to cheer again. You arrogant little punk! Once this is over, you'll be on toilet duty for life. Ha! My toilet hasn't been cleaned in years. If it's not sparkling, you're drinking from it. Dash. Meanwhile, the original elite crew members who supported Roya scoffed. Open your eyes, idiots! The vice-captain hasn't been touched once. Just as he finished speaking, Roya's voice echoed across the deck. Squard! I'm going to count to 3. If you don't back down by then, whatever happens next is on you. His voice was crisp and calm, cutting through the surrounding noise like a blade. Everyone paused. Even the seasoned commanders, including Marco, looked confused. What is he planning? 1. Squard, blinded by rage and shame, didn't retreat. If anything, his sword blurred even faster, forming a curtain of silver light. But no matter how he attacked, none of his strikes could touch Roya. Every blade glanced away, sliding off like water off a rock. 2. A strange tension gripped the deck. Even Doma and Whitebeard tensed, instinctively aware that something monumental was about to happen. 3. The moment the final number rang out, silence fell. Dash. Before everyone's eyes. Roya slowly rose from his seat. He extended his hand forward, reaching through the flurry of blades. His arm passed straight through the whirlwind of slashes unscathed. And gently closed around Squard's sword hand. With a soft clack, the sword was plucked from Squard's hand like a toy. The whirlwind of attacks vanished instantly. The sword, once aimed at Roya's throat, was now pointed at Squard's chest. Dash. Everyone had watched it happen. But no one could understand it. Marco murmured in awe. So that's the observation field. Not a single attack can land on him. Vista's eyes bulged, hand twitching as he tried to replicate the move in the air. But even in simulation, it was impossible to pass through that many strikes unscathed. Yozu's body gleamed with diamond light, his frame shifting uncomfortably. But even he couldn't imagine pulling off a move like that. Doma whispered, trembling. I thought Squard's swordsmanship had already reached the peak. But at this range, he couldn't even scratch Roya's arm. Beside him, Whitebeard could only shake her head in disbelief. Dash. Even without understanding the exact mechanics of what had just happened, one thing was clear. Roya was overwhelmingly, undeniably strong. Dash. Squard's crew had collapsed to their knees. Their boss had picked a fight with the vice-captain and been annihilated. There was no need to ask what fate awaited the great whirlpool spider pirates. The elite crew members from earlier? They didn't even bother looking at the defeated fools. Their eyes were glued burning with pure, unshakable worship. On one man only. Vice-Captain Roya. No one felt the impact of Roya's blade-stealing move more than Squard himself. Now frozen in place, Squard's mind looped over the same scene. Roya's arm sliding unscathed through his whirlwind of strikes, effortlessly plucking the blade from his grasp. He didn't even notice that the sword was now aimed at his own chest. But until he understood what just happened, he couldn't die in peace. Each time my blade slipped off, I told myself it was Haki, just a dodge. But this he reached through the flurry. He was hit, but he wasn't. How is that even possible? No answer came. And with each second, Squard's heart tightened under the pressure of his confusion. Then he heard the other division commanders whispering, also trying to make sense of it. He saw Vista and Yozu running mock drills, trying to replicate the impossible. But no one understood it. And most unbearable of all, was the faint, effortless smile on Roya's face. A look that seemed to say, you never stood a chance. Squard's last shred of pride cracked. His knees gave out, and he collapsed in front of Roya, head bowed. Vice-Captain. I was blind, please punish me as you see fit. Dash. This was exactly what Roya wanted. It wasn't enough to shatter a man's techniques. You had to break his spirit. Root the idea of your invincibility into his soul. Not just victory. Worship. This was the goal of the observation field's active ability. Roya had already given it a name. Heart Steel. Its core effect was simple but terrifying. Letting the enemy envision their worst failure before it happens. Then making it real. The psychological blow far outweighed any physical damage. With a power that drains my life force each use, Roya thought. It better be worth it. He quickly checked his vitality stats. Only 5 points lost. Basically negligible. I'll regain that naturally in a few minutes. Plus, I can recover it through food or system returns anyway. I might as well treat it like mana. Later, I should consider dumping more points into vitality, might unlock something interesting. Already, 1 point had regenerated. Satisfied, he turned his focus back to Squard. Squard's tone, posture, and even his soul had fully submitted. Roya smirked. Time to maximize the value of this newly tamed rooster. Dash. Most of the 43 allied crews were just like Squard, brash, emotional, and not very bright. To control them, raw power wasn't enough. You had to offer rewards too. A little carrot, a big stick. That's how you ruled men like this. Dash. Roya gave a casual glance toward Doma and Whitebeard, who were still watching from nearby. Then he sat back on the captain's throne. These two blades are nice. One's heavy, one's fast. Could be very useful for different situations. It's a shame your training method is all wrong. That's why your skill hasn't improved. His voice echoed across the suddenly silent deck. Everyone was confused. Wait, what now? Squard challenges the vice-captain, gets obliterated, and now Roya's giving sword lessons. But Squard understood immediately. With a loud thud, he slammed his forehead onto the deck in a full prostration. Vice-captain. Please grant me the right path to swordsmanship. From now on, I am your blade slave. Your wool is the edge of my sword. Dash. Roya knew this total submission was the lingering effect of heart steel. Fine. Having a blade slave will strengthen my influence. He nodded. Good. I accept you. The best training method for you is actually quite simple. Use your giant heavy sword to practice speed. And your light blade to practice heavy strikes. Dash. The deck went completely silent. Then shock rippled through the entire fleet. Marco murmured. Train speed with weight, and power with speed. That's genius. Only someone at the very top would think like that. No wonder he's the vice captain. Vista frowned, drawing his twin rapiers staring at them, deep in thought. Yozu's hands lit up with diamond shine as he stared at his fists. Even Whitebeard, eavesdropping from his cabin, furrowed his brow and stroked his chin. Use weight to master lightness. Use lightness to master force. That principle could be applied to all weapons, not just swords. Roya's power isn't just his haki. His mind is dangerous, too. Even Doma and Whitey Bay had dropped their mocking attitude. Now, they stared at Royal with serious respect. Meanwhile, a few less educated pirates scratched their heads. Hey bro, what did the vice captain mean just now? I just wanna slash faster. Wouldn't a lighter blade help with that? You idiot! Didn't you hear? That method is tailored for squad. It's not for guys like us. Damn! I wish the vice captain would give me some pointers. Yeah, in your dreams. Squad, still kneeling, couldn't contain his joy. Thank you, master. Roy laughed lightly and tossed the sword back. Squad caught it reverently, carefully sheathing the blade. Then, still kneeling, he shuffled backward to Roya's side. Maintaining the posture of a proper blade slave. His crewmates, seeing this, finally found their confidence again. One of them sneered at the previously smug corps members. Hey losers! Our boss is the vice captain's blade slave now. You better kneel and beg forgiveness, or get ready to scrub toilets on our ship. For Roya, guiding others in training was almost laughably easy. That's because the Observation Haki domain came with another powerful function. It could automatically generate status cards for every person or object within its range, storing all their attributes directly in Roya's consciousness. Take Squad, for example. His character card was the perfect case study. Despite having a measly 50 points in armament haki, both his physical combat and weapon mastery were at a solid 500 points each. The real kicker? His potential rating for both stats was the max value of 999. In short, he had insane potential. While his potential for the three haki types was poor, if trained correctly, and his strengths pushed to the limit, he could easily become quasi-emperor level. That's why Roya hadn't refused Squad's request to become his blade slave. Even if the title sounded humble, a slave's strength still reflected on Roya's reputation. If Squad was weak, it was Roya who'd look bad. Of course, beyond giving him insight into people's attributes and conditions, the status cards had an even more important feature. They offered personalized improvement strategies for each individual. Squad's recommended fix? Swap how he trained with his blades. Practice speed with the heavy sword, and power with the light one. Simple as that. The domain's analysis and guidance were never wrong. Back on deck, the crew were still deep in thought. Roya, seeing this, stood up and made his way toward his luxury vice-captain cabin. Squad, still kneeling, didn't move until Roya was 5 meters away. Then he scrambled to his feet and followed behind him with small, respectful steps like a loyal retainer. Once Roya entered, Squad stood guard silently at the door, posture firm and reverent. He was about to dive deep into revising his sword training plans. When the light dimmed in front of him, it was Whitebeard. Squad instantly bowed low. Pops. Whitebeard patted his shoulder. Good choice. Keep it up. Then he knocked on the cabin door. And entered. Inside, Royal was lounging comfortably on a sofa as Whitebeard hunched through the doorway, his massive frame almost comically large for the room. Roya knew why he had come. He's here to ask me to fix his old injuries, Roya thought. Makes sense. Seeing Roya's mysterious smile, Whitebeard felt a little uneasy. Because honestly, up until now, he'd done nothing but give Roya responsibilities. Without offering him any benefits in return. He hadn't expected such amazing results from Roya's guidance of Squad. But seeing it with his own eyes had finally convinced him. This guy might actually be able to fix me. So, swallowing his pride, Whitebeard came to ask in person. What if he really can save me? Still hesitant, Whitebeard managed a sheepish grin. Vice Captain, about my old injuries. Any chance you could take a look? Outside the cabin, a crowd had gathered. Marco, Vista, Yozu, Izzo, and most of the commanders were already there. They had come to ask Roya for training guidance, but upon overhearing Whitebeard's request, their attention shifted entirely. They all looked to Marco, the crew's lead doctor. He nodded solemnly. Pop's condition is a result of years of internal and external injuries stacking up. Now that he's older, his body can't keep up with the demands of his massive frame. There's no cure. Then, realizing how hopeless that sounded, he quickly added. I mean, I couldn't cure him. But Vice Captain Roya might be different. Dash. Just then, inside the room, Roya spoke. Old man, fixing your body isn't that hard, actually. Dash. Whitebeard's entire body jolted. He tried to maintain a calm expression, but the slight trembling of his lips betrayed him. Thump. 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 Whitebeard's heartbeat echoed through the cabin like drum beats. It was all Roya could hear. The legendary man's powerful heart seasoned in 100 battles was now hammering like a child's, fueled by hope. He knew better than anyone how broken he was. His body was a ruined fortress. A mountain of wounds, hollowed by time. Every treatment he had tried had failed. His only wish had been to hold it together just long enough to help save Ace. But now, easily fixed. He said it could be fixed? Not stalled. Not suppressed. Solved. Whitebeard's heart pounded harder. His massive body leaned forward. Afraid to miss a single word. Roya took one glance at Whitebeard's character card. His vitality had dropped to a dangerously low 300 points. Then, checking the observation field's diagnosis and suggestion, Roya felt fully confident. He continued. The root of your problem is simple. Your max vitality is too low. On top of that, your body is just too large. Just existing drains more than you can regenerate. That's why rest and recovery never improve your condition. Dash. Whitebeard's eyes widened. He was stunned. That was exactly the problem he had long suspected but never confirmed. He's not just spouting nonsense. He's hit the nail on the head. It was the first time in decades he felt real hope. He stared at Roya, eyes burning. Dash. Outside the room, the others had stopped breathing. They leaned in closer to hear more. Dash. Roya smiled calmly. Solving this requires two things. Increase the source, and cut the drain. Whitebeard blinked. The source, and the drain. Roya nodded. Correct. I mean real management of both. Not like what you're doing now. Lying in bed pretending to be dead all day. Whitebeard's face flushed red. Outside, Marco's face turned bright crimson as well. After all, the pretending to be dead in bed therapy plan had been his idea. Being casually dismissed like that stung deeply. Roya cleared his throat lightly, bringing Whitebeard's focus back. About increasing your vitality, that part will have to wait. Right now, the top priority for this crew is rescuing our 2nd Division commander. Inside and outside the cabin, everyone nodded in agreement. In the Whitebeard Pirates, comrades came above all else. Even Whitebeard himself would never place healing his body ahead of saving Ace. Roya continued. So for now, the most effective approach is reducing consumption. And the first thing you need to master, old man, is a technique called life return. Dash. At the mention of life return, Whitebeard's pupils shrank. He'd heard of that technique before. A secret among secrets, one of CP9's top classified skills, never to be leaked. How does he even know about it? Don't tell me. Roya's observation domain can even read that deep. Dash. Through his domain, Roya had already read Whitebeard's entire thought process. But he couldn't be bothered to explain. He simply smiled and said. Life return is a technique where, through focused training, you gain complete control over every part of your body. Even the hair on your toes. With your level of cultivation, you'd only need a few days of training to pick it up. Whitebeard shuddered, beginning to understand the brilliance of the idea. Precision control over one's body. If I can shut down unnecessary energy drain, I could extend my stamina dramatically. Dash. But Roya wasn't done. And if that's all you do, you might as well go back to pretending to be dead in bed. What I want you to do, old man, is this. Once you've mastered precise control, begin actively removing the parts of your body that are too far gone. What? Actively remove? Whitebeard froze. How could that even make sense? Cutting off parts of his body like pruning branches? It was insane. You're not fixing a wooden puppet, you're dealing with a living human. But then, Roya pointed to his lower right abdomen. Your liver has already hardened by about a third. That one portion uses more energy than all your other internal organs combined. Cut it out. Dash. Whitebeard's lips twitched. Just imagining a third of his liver being removed made his side hurt. But then he paused. Wait, if I get rid of the damaged part, the rest might work even better. For a normal person, cutting it out would be devastating. But with life return I could break it down internally. And force it out through my pores. No pain. No blood. Just gone. Brilliant. His eyes lit up with undeniable excitement. Dash. He leaned in. Vice Captain. Use your observation domain. Tell me what other parts I need to cut out. I'll make a list right now. Dash. Roya chuckled. Old man, once you learn life return, you'll be able to sense all that yourself. Why bother making me do it? Whitebeard burst into hearty laughter. You're right, hi. This reduce consumption strategy of yours is as ruthless as it is effective. Removing anything that burns too much fuel? I like it. Dash. Roya grinned. Once you're done with this first phase, you might shed a good 50 pounds. Whitebeard laughed harder. Even better. Let me look like I'm on my deathbed. Then when that old bastard Sengoku lets his guard down. Bam. I give him the surprise of his life. Dash. Roya chuckled along. Don't rush it, old man. This is just treatment 1. Once you finish it, I've got phase 2 ready for you. At that point, Sengoku won't even be enough. You'll need all 3 admirals just to put up a fight. Dash. Whitebeard's grin began to fade. But not from doubt. No, something else was stirring inside him. A flood of energy he hadn't felt in years. That youthful, invincible spirit he thought had long faded had suddenly, fiercely returned. He thought back. When did I start accepting defeat? When did I decide that my only role was to die to save Ace? Just because of this broken body? I really believed I couldn't face Sengoku one-on-one anymore. Hell no. Dash. Marine Ford? 100,000 elite soldiers? 7 warlords? So what? If I can fix this body, even if I only get back half my peak power, I'll smash Marine Ford to pieces. Whitebeard took a deep breath, his eyes gleaming with fierce gratitude. He looked at Roya with reverence. It was this young man who didn't look particularly remarkable at first glance, who had reignited the fire in his heart. He had pulled him back from the edge of despair. He had made him believe again. Dash. Whitebeard gave one last glance to Roya, who met it with a confident, knowing smile. Then he stood. Vice Captain. I'll return to my cabin immediately and start training life return. As for that bunch of brats outside, I leave them to you. Teach them well. Dash. Then, without another word, Whitebeard bowed deeply to Roya. A moment of solemn, unshakable respect. Dash. In Whitebeard's heart, Roya was no longer a potential successor. He had become something far greater. Dash. Outside, the 15 commanders went pale. Even through the wall and closed door, their observation haki had perfectly captured Whitebeard's actions. The man who had ruled the seas for 40 years had just bowed to a young vice-captain. To Roger, to Rox, Whitebeard had only ever stood as an equal. And now, he had lowered himself. There was only one explanation. Roya's strength had surpassed all imagination. Whitebeard understood this, and that's why he had bowed. Dash. Meanwhile, Squard straightened his spine, face beaming with pride. Becoming Vice-Captain Roya's blade slave is the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. Dash. With a swoosh, the cabin door opened. Whitebeard stepped out. He swept his gaze across the assembled commanders with a gleam of vigor not seen in ages. And with his head high, strode back to his captain's quarters. Inside the dining hall, the captains of the various allied pirate crews were slowly trickling in, enjoying a sumptuous meal. They were also casually exchanging recent news and stories. McGuy sat with a scowl on his face, his eyes scanning the room. Where's Squard? Don't tell me that bastard hasn't shown up yet. Doma, sitting at the same table, replied with a sour tone. The great whirlpool spider? He's tied himself to the vice-captain now. You think he's still gonna sit around with us small fries? McGuy's brows furrowed, the lightning-shaped mustache he kept meticulously groomed twitching slightly. You mean that vice-captain the newbie with a one-berry bounty? Squard's really fallen that far, huh? Groveling at the feet of some spoiled brat who climbed ranks through connections. Doma's frown deepened. That wild assumption irritated him, and he was about to correct it, when Elmi leaned in from the next table, unable to stay quiet any longer. McGuy, is your brain made of muscle or something? Do you really think Pops would handpick a vice-captain just based on connections? McGuy scoffed and folded his arms. Knowing Squard, he would have challenged the guy right away. And yet, what happened? Didn't Doma just say he became the guy's little lapdog? Dash. Doma gave a strange look and said. Who says he didn't challenge the vice-captain? McGuy's mustache twitched again. With Squard's blade skills, even Marco would need serious effort to beat him. And the deck's clean, no damage, no signs of a fight. We arrived around the same time. No way we missed anything like that. Doma shrugged. Or maybe, the vice-captain beat him in one move. Dash. McGuy scoffed loud and hard. One move? Get real. Among all 43 allied crews, the only one stronger than Squard is me. Even Pops would need 100 rounds to take me down. If that damn vice-captain could beat Squard in one hit, I'd lick his boots clean without complaint. Dash. Doma, used to this kind of thick-headedness, gave up trying. He simply pointed at Whitey Bay, sitting not far off. Ask her, then. She and I were both there when it happened. Dash. McGuy slammed the table. Forget asking. I'll challenge him myself. Squard might be a bootlicker, but I've got a spine. Dash. Of course, everyone in the room had some level of observation haki and Whitey Bay had heard every word. She turned her head slowly, a cold sneer on her lips. The last person who said what you just did is now the vice-captain's loyal blade slave. You better start praying the vice-captain actually needs someone to polish his boots. Because otherwise, your future's looking rough. I've heard from the flagship crew. The vice-captain's observation haki has evolved to an unimaginable level. You do remember what that haki can do, don't you? Dash. A bead of cold sweat slid down the back of McGuy's neck. It trailed along his spine, raising every hair along the way. One warning from Doma, he could brush off. But Whitey Bay too. That made it undeniable. So it's true, this vice-captain really beat Squard in a single strike. Squard, you damn idiot, you set me up. McGuy nervously looked up at the ceiling. Just above was the vice-captain's quarters and the captain's cabin. And sure enough his observation haki picked up on dozens of powerful auras, all gathered inside. All the division commanders were in the vice-captain's room. Whatever's going on, it's clear the vice-captain's strength is now recognized by every single top officer. McGuy's heart started pounding like a drum, cold sweat pouring. Gone was the bravado. No more talk of challenges. Dash. Inside the vice-captain's cabin, Roya looked helplessly at the 15 commanders all kneeling before him in 2 neat rows. He sighed, then called out toward the door. Squard, go tell McGuy. He has 1 hour to lick the entire deck clean. If he finishes, I won't hold his disrespect against him. If not, well, he knows what happens next. Dash. Squard answered with a big grin and headed toward the dining room, whistling as he went. Dash. Marco bowed low and said. Vice-Captain, we've come to request your guidance in our training. The war with the Marines is approaching fast. Even a slight increase in strength could make all the difference. We humbly beg you to help us grow stronger. All 15 commanders bowed together, chanting. We humbly beg the Vice-Captain to guide our training. Dash. Roya scanned the group, slightly annoyed by the forced tone of their request. But, he could feel their sincerity, their desperation to save Ace. He sighed inwardly. Well, Whitebeard's already all but handed the crew over to me. After the war, he's clearly planning to step down entirely. These guys are practically my inner circle now. Might as well shape them up. He nodded. All right. The technique I discussed with the old man earlier, life return. You'll all need to learn it. Train hard, and master it as quickly as possible. I'll be monitoring your progress through my domain. When you make mistakes, I'll correct you. Train freely, use your own understanding and instincts. Dash. The commanders lit up with joy. To have someone of Roya's power watching over them and personally guiding their progress? It felt like they were about to level up overnight. Dash. They were just about to thank him and leave when Roya spoke again. Based on your individual stats and attributes, I'll design a custom training plan for each of you. Once you meet the criteria, you'll receive it. That's all. Dismissed. Dash. The commanders were now completely overwhelmed with excitement. They didn't just get advice, they were getting tailored regimens, custom-made by the most powerful being they'd ever seen. And the vice-captain didn't even seem fazed. To him, it was effortless. That only made them respect him more. As Roya stood and left the room, the commanders all knelt in silence, their foreheads pressed to the floor. Only after he was gone did they finally look up. They exchanged glances, their eyes blazing with excitement. Custom training plans, personal guidance, he's making us into monsters. A single thought echoed in all their minds. We pledge our lives to the vice-captain. As Roya stepped out onto the staircase, he just happened to spot McGuy. The man's skinny legs were sticking straight into the air. He was walking on his hands, licking the deck with remarkable speed and focus. Trailing behind him was his longtime rival, Squard, holding a sand glass and dutifully keeping time. Roya chuckled and shook his head. Ah, what a waste of effort. Then, without further comment, he made his way down toward the lower decks officers' dining hall. Along the way, every crew member who crossed paths with him immediately froze, dropping what they were doing to stand at attention. They saluted him with eyes full of admiration, no, worship. This reverence had even begun to surpass what they showed Whitebeard himself. Inside the private dining hall reserved for commanders and above, Roya casually pointed at a few signature dishes on the menu. Before long, the table was covered with exquisite food. But halfway through his meal, his observation domain suddenly triggered a passive alert. A large fleet was rapidly approaching. This image was clearly delivered to Roya's mind by his advanced Haki. The fleet's sails bore the unmistakable insignia of the Navy. Roya calmly dabbed the corners of his mouth with a napkin and said to the waiter beside him. Sound the order. All on-duty personnel immediately take battle positions. All Allied fleet members return to your respective flagships, follow the Moby Dick in loose formation, and prepare for combat. Without waiting to see the waiter rush out in a panic, Roya got up and headed for the main deck. The orders traveled swiftly across the Moby Dick, and the once still beast of a ship erupted with ferocious energy. Pirates scrambled not chaotically, but with practiced precision to take their positions. Roya strode straight toward the command platform and stood at the captain's station. Marco was already in place, naturally moving to Roya's side, ready to relay any of his commands. Even though the lookouts hadn't sounded any warning yet, no one on the ship questioned Roya's preemptive orders. His command carried absolute weight. Marco offered him the telescope, but Roya gently pushed it aside. There was no need. His face was calm, confident. Only a few vice admirals and 23 warships. And they think they can stop the Whitebeard Pirates. Arrogance will be their downfall. Left rudder, 15 degrees. Forward cannons load and ready to fire. Marco immediately sent the command down the brass communication pipes to the forward artillery crew. Moments later, the lookout finally spotted the tip of a mast through his telescope. Before he could issue a warning, that one mast split into dozens, an entire forest of masts surfacing on the horizon. He frantically rang the battle bell, using a special rhythm to encode the intel. Portside direction 15 nautical miles, 23 warships. Marco quickly deciphered the signal in his head, but couldn't help glancing at Roya again. He gave those orders minutes ago, before we even saw the first mast. Everyone knew Observation Haki could sense beyond line of sight. But Roya had made his call while eating lunch. A detection range of 20 to 30 nautical miles. That's insane. For the first time in a while, Marco was truly grateful he was not part of the Navy fleet. They haven't even entered cannon range. And the enemy already knows their every move. What kind of war is this? There's no winning this. Just then, Roya issued a new command, one that even Marco didn't understand at first. Fire the forward cannon. Marco hesitated for a beat, but relayed the command anyway. But Vice Captain, even with our 12 nautical mile range, they're still too far. Their ships can't close 3 miles that fast. Roya smiled confidently. Relax. They'll rush forward and catch this shell with their flagship. Marco's breath caught. Of course, he can see the future. This isn't just long-range sensing. Roya is predicting what will happen, with terrifying accuracy. That word he used, catch, how poetic. In naval battles, cannon barrages usually targeted areas, not specific ships. Only someone with Roya's observation domain could ensure every shot was a direct hit. Marco shivered with excitement and a bit of regret. If only my own Haki were strong enough. I'd be able to watch their flagship explode in real time. Boom. The forward cannon thundered, and even under the noon sun, the fireball was blinding. A cannonball half a foot wide screamed from the barrel, soaring into the sky in a perfect arc. Headed straight for that distant fleet. Marco craned his neck, eyes wide, watching it fly. Suddenly, he had an idea. He raced up the observation tower, snatched the telescope from the lookout, and locked onto the flying shell's path. Meanwhile, in the Navy fleet, Vice Admirals Bastille and Dalmatian stood on the command deck of the lead ship. Bastille tapped the metal of his signature helmet and barked. Order the fleet, full speed ahead. Forward cannons prepare to fire. Dalmatian's spotted dogtail flicked behind him. Is that really wise? Our orders were only to monitor Whitebeard. Starting a fight could disrupt Admiral Sengoku's overall plan. Bastille snorted. Whitebeard is a dying relic. He could drop dead in his sleep any day. His time is over. All ships advance. With that command, the 23 warships surged forward. Each carried 3 massive forward cannons, now prepped and primed for a devastating coordinated bombardment. Suddenly, Dalmatian's ears twitched. Wait, do you hear that? Bastille grinned. I hear the sound of Whitebeard begging for mercy, my friend. But Dalmatian's expression had turned grim. Both his long, dog-like ears stood fully upright. He activated both his animal hearing and observation haki, stretching his senses to the limit. And then he heard it. A shrill, ominous whistling sound cutting through the sky from afar. Incoming shell. Evasive maneuvers. Now. He howled at the crew. But the helmsman stared blankly at him, frozen. Bastille chuckled. Come on, Dalmatian, don't be ridiculous. You think Whitebeard could see us from that far away, let alone fire accurately? You've gotta be dreaming. Vice Admiral Bastille scoffed at the warning, completely dismissing what Dalmatian had just shouted. But Dalmatian was growing desperate. Their flagship, if it continued at its current speed and trajectory, was on a direct collision course with a screaming artillery shell fired from afar. Since when did the Whitebeard Pirates have someone capable of this level of battlefield command? From detecting their approach in advance, to calculating the exact lead required for a long-range cannon strike, Dalmatian had never seen tactics this precise, not even from Whitebeard himself. If Whitebeard had always possessed this kind of firepower, our elite naval fleets would have been wiped out long ago. What frightened Dalmatian most was, only one cannon had been fired. And yet the enemy was fully confident that it would land. They didn't guess. They knew. That kind of confidence terrifying. Realizing the urgency, and with the roar of the incoming shell growing louder, Dalmatian no longer hesitated. He launched a brutal kick, sending the dazed helmsman flying across the deck. Then he seized the wheel himself and cranked it hard full left rudder. Dash! The sudden change in direction caught Bastille completely off guard. He'd been standing tall with arms crossed, smug and brash and not holding on to anything. The sharp turn sent him staggering violently, nearly tumbling headfirst onto the deck. You damned mutt! Have you lost your mind? This is mutiny! Bastille roared, lunging at Dalmatian. Dalmatian, for all his fondness for his canine Zoan form, hated being called a dog. But now, with a massive shell bearing down on them, he swallowed his pride. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught the flicker of fire, the shell, descending fast, superheated from the friction of its long flight. You idiot, look up! Bastille's face twisted in rage. Trying to trick me now? Are you high on expired dog chow? But before he could finish barking insults, he was already within striking distance, swinging both fists like hammers toward Dalmatian. Dash! Blinded by anger, Bastille didn't notice that the previously kicked helmsman had now frozen in terror. His mouth hung open, staring upward at the streaking fireball approaching from the sky. His knees buckled. He pissed himself. Dash! Dalmatian took a brutal pounding, his jaws clenching, steel teeth nearly shattering under the barrage of punches. He coughed up blood, again and again. But even as Bastille assaulted him, he refused to let go of the wheel, desperately holding the course on that evasive turn. The ships flanking the flagship, seeing it swing erratically and suddenly, scrambled to avoid a collision, plunging the entire formation into chaos. Dash! And then, the shell arrived. Bastille finally heard the telltale shriek of metal slicing through air. He turned, eyes wide, and saw it. A glowing red iron sphere, ablaze from its descent, plummeting toward the ship like judgment from the gods. Even with his middling observation haki, Bastille could immediately calculate the impact point. The trajectory was perfect. It would strike starboard side, just below the bow. Directly where the forward ammo hold was located. No. Not even Dalmatian could adjust the ship's path fast enough now. Dash! There was no escape. No options. No salvation. Dash! Bastille and Dalmatian's minds went blank. Is it really possible for someone to fire from that far? And precisely hit this exact spot? And account for every evasive maneuver? We might try. Dalmatian gave a bitter chuckle, his lips now dripping with blood. He let go of the wheel. Then dropped to all fours and sprinted toward the left side of the ship. Bastille, shaken at last, scrambled after him. Boom! The shell struck dead center. The ammo room exploded instantly. The forward deck shattered into flying splinters, debris spraying in all directions. A column of blinding fire surged upward. A shockwave of concussive force tore through the air. Every loose plank, every nail, every cannon blown sky high. Wooden shards, like thousands of arrows, pierced the deck. Not a single inch remained untouched. Not a single crewman on deck remained unscathed. Only 2 survived. Bastille and Dalmatian, bloodied, backs full of shrapnel, leapt desperately to a nearby ship. Dash! But the damage wasn't over. The force of the blast also triggered the already loaded forward cannons. They fired. directly into their own allies. At such close range, even the Navy's steel-reinforced hulls were torn open like paper. Explosions rippled across the next ship. Its ammo stores ignited, setting off a chain reaction of internal detonations. The starboard side was obliterated. It looked like a giant invisible beast had taken a massive bite out of the ship's flank. Flames roared inside exposed lower decks. Dozens of off-duty sailors were incinerated in seconds. Dash. And then, crack. The ship's keel snapped. Unable to handle the warped weight distribution, the ship broke in two. It sank swiftly, the split hull vanishing beneath the waves like a toy tossed into a tub. Dash. The Navy fleet hadn't even fired a shot in return. And they had already lost their flagship and a secondary warship. Dash. The shock was immediate. The sailors, those who remained, were utterly shattered. Confused, panicked, paralyzed. Most had no idea what had just happened. When the flagship suddenly veered left, the formation broke. And because of that chaos, no one saw the cannonball coming. Dash. And that was the most terrifying part. The unknown. Fear bloomed in the minds of every soldier. And spread like wildfire. Dash. Bastille rose to his feet, seething, blood dripping from dozens of wounds. His armament haki flared. He expelled every splinter lodged in his back, sending them rattling across the next ship's deck like falling arrows. All units resume the advance. We'll make Whitebeard pay dearly for this sneak attack. Dash. But Dalmatian. Dalmatian was silent. He said nothing, eyes still locked on the horizon. Compared to Bastille's ignorant bluster, Dalmatian had seen the truth. And that was what terrified him. He replayed the entire cannon strike in his head over and over again. Each time, the pattern became clearer. The logic more undeniable. Dash. The enemy commander didn't just fire a lucky shot. He knew exactly when I would detect the shell. He knew I would instinctively order a hard left turn. And he placed the shot precisely where I'd end up because of that turn. I'm the one who steered the ammo room into the path of the blast. I brought the shell to us. Dash. A one-shot kill. A trap laid with the future in mind. And Dalmatian had played his part, perfectly. On the lookout platform of the Moby Dick, Marco's hands trembled violently as he gripped the telescope. Even at that extreme distance, one shot, one kill. And, hitting the enemy's ammo hold exactly. No, it's not chance. This is astonishing foresight. Vice-Captain's observation domain has reached heights human minds cannot grasp. Shock, exhilaration, fervor, his emotions raced. Adrenaline surged. He felt an urge to charge at the Navy ships and unleash his reckless passion there. Dash. On the bridge of Skull Tun, McGuy also watched the damage inflicted on the Navy fleet through his clear telescopic lens. He'd nearly wet himself when the flagship made that bizarre hard left maneuver to catch the shell. Previously, he'd grudgingly licked the deck himself, fear of Vice-Captain's unknown might, plain and simple. But now? He was genuinely convinced. The more convinced he was, the more terrified he felt about his previous boasts. With the Vice-Captain commanding the cannons, he turns rust into wonders. One flagship's front cannon alone produced that result. So what if it's all 48 ships, coordinated under his command? The firepower coverage would be unimaginable. Countless scenarios flashed through McGuy's mind. The vision was intoxicating, he literally trembled with excitement. If that kind of naval warfare were possible, being a part of it would be the greatest honor and pleasure in life. Dash. The Whitebeard fleet began their final acceleration. Across the water, the Navy's 30 warships cut in at a visible angle. The Pirates' 48 in total adjusted course slightly off the wind, keeping pace and closing distance. They were essentially parallel, moving in formation, but the gap was shrinking fast. Dash. Though outnumbered in training and discipline, the Allied pirate captains weren't hopeful. Close-range cannon duels are not our strength. This is where things get dangerous. The Navy's fleet fight in tight formation, and their cannon capabilities, range, density, rate of fire, they were on another level. Pirates excelled at boarding maneuvers. Their only real chance was to close the distance and engage in melee combat. Dash. All eyes of the Allied captains turned toward the Moby Dick. Without flag signals, they wouldn't know what to do next. But Vice-Captain Roya remained composed. Dash. Left rudder, 7 degrees. The helmsman repeated calmly, and the ship slowly swung left. Conventional wisdom said that this would increase cannon exposure to enemy fire. But after witnessing that one miraculous shell shot, everyone treated Roya's orders like gospel truth. If he told them to uproot the rudder and devour it, they'd do it without hesitation. Nearly 50 ships mirrored the 7 degrees turn. Dash. On the Navy flagship, Bastille smiled in relief as his lookout reported. As I thought, the Whitebeard fleet has turned command over to that rookie vice-captain. That shell was just beginner's luck, nothing more. They're trying to cross our bow for a flanking approach. He scoffed. Eyeing the fleet, he commanded. All ships right rudder, 10 degrees. Starboard batteries, load and stand by. His signals cascaded rapidly. 30 ships readied for full engagement. Dash. Dalmatian stood by, expression grim. He didn't argue. Bastille had fleet combat experience, and given the losses, they needed a decisive strike to save face. Dash. Roya, however, immediately issued a new command. Left rudder, 10 degrees. Full sail, maximum speed. Oars at the ready, prepare to row. At once, the fleet surged like a glimmering row of sea dragons. From the gunports of the 5 largest ships, long oars slapped the water in unison, wings shaping them into swift beasts of war. Dash. But this time, the captains of the allied pirate fleet hesitated. Another 10 degrees left turn. At this speed and heading, we'll walk right into their cannon fire. If we use rowers for a sudden push, we lose maneuverability and risk being cut down mid-bow. Enough of this rookie NAV dramatics. They refused to follow blindly. Ships split. Some held course. Some right turned back parallel to the navy. Only 2 stayed with the flagship, Squard and McGuy. One was the sword servant, the other fully dedicated at a cellular level. The rest pulled out. Dash. Bastille's lookout reported this shift. He roared with triumph. See that, Dalmatian? That is the true nature of pirates. A rabble of backstabbers who would dare to stand tall before me. He glared and commanded. All ships open fire. Take down Whitebeard's flagship. At Bastille's command, 30 Navy warships opened fire in succession. The combined recoil shoved each vessel over 5,000 tons forcefully backward into port. They drifted several meters off, side-shifting across the water. The sea shuddered under the incredible power of simultaneous broadside cannon volleys. Dash. The spectacle was awe-inspiring. Flames erupted skyward from countless muzzles, painting the sea and clouds orange-red. Thick smoke billowed, obscuring the entire fleet. Swirling cannonballs formed a terrifying black iron net that ascended into the sky, spreading wide, unmistakably impenetrable. Dash. A roaring gale drove this metal downpour toward the pirate fleet. At its center, the Moby Dick bore the brunt, its broadside hammered by a barrage 3 times denser than the other ships. Marco dropped his telescope in awe-stunned fear and staggered to the deck as his knees buckled. Even after 30 years at sea, he'd never witnessed a navy opening 200 cannon ports and unleashing such a relentless storm. But there stood Roya upright, composed, a faint smile on his lips. Marco steadied himself. If the vice-captain isn't panicking, there must be a plan. Dash. Roya swept out his observation domain. Within moments, he linked himself to 7 warships. Simultaneously, orders echoed in each crew member's mind. Dash. 7 ships executed 7 distinct but coordinated evasive maneuvers in perfect synchrony. On the flagship, dozens of oarsmen defied expectations, synchronized beyond belief even as the rudder swung hard right by 6 degrees. Take that in, they accelerated forward and then pivoted right, then immediately, by another unspoken command, shifted left seamlessly, as if the rudder had a soul. The helmsman later confessed. It was more exhilarating than philosophizing with a geisha. Dash. On the secondary vessel, Beister realized what had happened. Even though the ship's rudder solo swung 12 degrees right and lacked oomph, the waves from the flagship's maneuvers carried it gently into precise alignment with the command. Other captains watched in stunned awe. Is this divine command? Through the observation domain, he's sending orders directly into each sailor's mind. 7 ships, over 2,000 crew, all synchronized under a single will. Even each cannonball's impact point was pre-computed. This isn't mere observation haki, it's a miracle. Dash. The 7 ships executed the same flawless turn. Shock shattered into worship. Despite the cannon blast still roaring overhead, every crewman knew one thing. Not a single cannonball would land. Boom after boom as explosive waves rained down, but shell after shell splashed harmlessly into water. No ships nicked, no damage, even the decks stayed clean. Marco wiped seawater from his face and looked toward Roya's direction. Not a single drop had touched him. Incredible evasion. A deafening cheer rose simultaneously across all 7 vessels, echoing to the rear fleet and across the Navy lines. On the Navy flagship, Bastille clenched hands, eyes and mouth twitching uncontrollably. Not a single hit. Impossible. You're all hallucinating. Check again immediately. In his rage, Bastille slapped a messenger for suggesting otherwise. His pacing and muttering unnerved every crewman. Morale plummeted. Dash. Dalmatian closed his eyes, recalling the maneuvers. A deep dread clawed at his mind. Triggered by timing and haunting foresight, he foresaw the next phase. Dash. In his vision, the 7 pirate ships aligned perfectly at different depths, forming a flawless line of coverage. Dalmatian seized Bastille by the collar and sprinted toward the lifeboats. He knew with certainty what was coming next. Dash. In the next heartbeat, boom. 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 Simultaneous detonations ripped through the Navy fleet. Cannon fire from the pirate ships precisely timed and aimed hit ammunition holds across the enemy line. Bastille's flagship shattered, others followed one by one. 30 warships, immolated in brutal combustion. Their decks erupted in blazing fireworks, monuments to Roya's meteoric rise. Dalmatian rode like a man possessed, fleeing the hellscape. Vice Captain Roya, his observation domain has reached perfection. We must report this to HQ.